The premiers went to Ottawa. Another meeting. What are we now? Are we 11 months into this deal now? 11 months into this new government? Who cares anyway? But another meeting. And and another meeting. But and then they had a separate meeting there. Just Danielle Smith, David Eby, and Mark Carney there. Trying to get this pipeline through. And, Danielle Smith said it was a good discussion. Again, I think they had some common ground on LNG, TMX expansion, electricity, but I mean, their stumbling block is still the pipeline, the northern pipeline. And here's David Eby reacting again to the tidewater pipeline for Alberta.
Yesterday in the House of Commons, the Prime Minister said in very clear terms, he said the Alberta MOU will build a pipeline to tidewater. Was that the position the Prime Minister adopted in those conversations today, or what did he say about it?
Well, it's certainly very clear to me that this is a project that's being driven by the province of Alberta and the Prime Minister, and our role constitutionally is pretty limited in that. But I will say that there hasn't been any significant update in terms of actually manifesting a pipeline in any significant way, and our position remains the same. There was a meeting with First Nations where the Prime Minister committed that coastal First Nations consent was key to this, and there's a significant amount of work ahead.
Yesterday.
He's walked back his fire and brimstone talk to now recognizing he doesn't really have much to say about it, but he's going to block at any gamut. Later on, he did say that, First Nations still don't want it, so he's going to do everything he can to block this, but he's recognizing that he has little. That's been the truth from the get-go, but the media was more than happy to play, and David Eby is more happy than to continue to gaslight Canadians, talking like he had the power to block it.
Well, it's all just so mixed up. It's like so much with Mark Carney and this new government. So little detail, so little adds up, so little makes sense. The reason that we are all looking at David Eby and asking him questions about whether he's going to veto this is because Mark Carney said he has a veto, even though, yeah, we all know constitutionally that he doesn't have a veto. That's not new information. We know that. The problem is the Prime Minister said he has a veto. The Premier of British Columbia has a veto. The First Nations have a veto. Until they don't. Do they? Don't they? Who cares? Mark Carney's not going to tell you. He likes you to be confused. Doesn't like to give you any details. But David Eby, he just always, you say, yeah, he's not fire and brimstone anymore. He just always seems like disappointed. He's like a tired, disappointed dad talking to his son or something, isn't he? He's like, son, I know you got another F. So he's just so gloomy. He's like low energy and he's low spirits. It seems like he's very unhappy in general. And he's always got he's always downcast, isn't he? He's like, I just think, I know that might sound petty, but I think that's not good. That's not good in a leader. He's one of the most important and powerful people in Canada. And he's just always moping around like a sort of depressed teenager. It's very, very odd attitude. And he also, he referred to the meeting with Danielle Smith, that included Danielle Smith, and he said it was borderline polite or something along those lines. Like, what are you talking about, man? Why is he speaking like that? And it's just, he baffles me, David Eby. He gives me the impression that he almost doesn't want to go on anymore. He's just had enough. Just look at his face there. He's so unhappy all the time. But yeah, anyway, a mystery what he gets up to.
He likes to blame people for everything, and here he goes. Now he's throwing out the treason word. Let's listen to this here.
Now I understand the desire to hold a referendum, to talk about the issues you want to talk about in Canada. We got free speech, that's important. But to go to a foreign country and to ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there's an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason. It is completely inappropriate to seek to weaken Canada, to seek to go and ask for assistance to break up this country from a foreign power. And with respect, a president who has not been particularly respectful of Canada's sovereignty. I'm going to be raising that issue at this table. I think that while we can respect the right of any Canadian to express themselves, to vote in a referendum. I think we need to draw the line at people seeking the assistance of foreign countries to break up this beautiful land of ours that our forefathers, our foremothers, our parents, our grandparents fought for.
That's good.
Sorry, I thought our forefathers were evil because they stole land off the indigenous. But what was that? Was it good? It's good that they fought for it? Sorry, Mr. Eby. You got to be consistent. This is what I mean. I'm talking about Mark Carney. Where is the consistency? Just try. Think. This is what I always say. You got to get this order right. First you think, then you speak. That has to be the order every time. That just makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'd also say, I have to chuck this in. Do you think David Eby would say the same thing about Quebec separatists? You know, in the past, they've had, I don't know what word to use, but pretty sketchy relationships, particularly with French. The famous episode when Charles de Gaulle came, I think, to Montreal and started singing about Vive Quebec and things like that. Like, were they traitors? Was that treason? Would he ever say that about them? I do wonder. But again, there's often this kind of paternalistic attitude from people in British Columbia, especially Vancouver. There's a patronizing paternalistic attitude to people from Alberta. And I think that's what you're seeing there. He's looking down his nose at people from Alberta, which is pretty common, I think, in that neck of the woods.
And it's from a Financial Times article that claims the Alberta Prosperity Project was seeking a meeting with just to get a credit facility for the transition fund there. They were seeking to get a $500 billion credit facility to transition to an independence and a separation referendum. So that's what that was, and that's where, David Eby, I mean, there's a lot of people that say he's the one that's destroying Canada by blocking a pipeline. So many people, the majority of Canadians want a pipeline. David Eby stands in the way. He doesn't want to look in the mirror for that one. He stands in the way of what Canadians want. He stands in the way of our economy is falling apart, literally falling apart. We have more and more people, record food bank lineups. And we just got the Liberal government's seeking applause by sprinkling some more crumbs out there for the people basically can't even afford to buy food. And this is what we should be applauding. And this, Eby loves a scapegoat, though. I mean, he seems to find a scapegoat every time he can. If it's not Trump, now he's got the Alberta. I don't know, like he's going to run out of people to hate. That's the thing. Like he's got everybody. He's targeted everybody at some point here.
But he's, just to give you an idea of the war that he's fighting to save his own skin, just a little bit of a sort of indication. He was asked a number of questions at a press conference in Ottawa yesterday, I think. Yeah, last night, I believe it was, about the NDP, the national NDP race, and specifically about Avi Lewis, that chap who we've featured a couple of times, and we had a good giggle about his pronouncements. And Avi Lewis, is very, very critical of David Eby's support, newfound support for LNG. And he's really snapping away at David Eby and the BC NDP for having committed the grievous sin of giving support to LNG. So David Eby, he's being pulled apart. He's really being dragged in two directions at once, and I think that's the party in general as well in BC. The government is being pulled in two directions, and it's a very hard political tightrope to walk. So he's trying to appease that group within his own party that agrees with Avi Lewis that LNG is the devil's gas or whatever, but at the same time he's trying to make sure that BC doesn't collapse into poverty, and also that he doesn't create this sort of terrible relationship with Alberta and the federal government. So he's got a lot of he's got a lot of pots boiling over at the same time.
He definitely has a full stovetop. And here, Danielle Smith put on another tweet there that she met with the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, there, and in discussing. You got to know that Danielle's got a couple of options on the table. One is getting that pipeline through the south as opposed to the west coast, and then the other one is talking about north. So I mean, she's definitely working hard. You can't deny Danielle Smith is working hard for Alberta, and it shows in Alberta's economy. And she's looking at everything. And I mean, they have It is Canada's golden goose. It is literally Canada's golden goose, yet treated like not so much.
But you listen to David Eby, and he talks again. He was saying yesterday in that same press conference, BC's the golden goose, according to David Eby. BC's the province that pays for everybody else through equalisation payments, even though it was neutral in the most recent one. But I mean, in David Eby's mind, he's starting to sound like a sort of Quebec premier, isn't he? He just makes up his own economic reality. Because in Quebec, hilariously, the conversation is all about how Quebec subsidizes the rest of Canada. I don't know if other people are even aware of that, but that is literally what they talk about all the time, is how Quebec subsidizes the rest of Canada and subsidizes Alberta oil and things like that. It completely deluded, no relationship to reality. I think maybe David Eby's been watching Quebec political debates or something like that.
And then the nuclear energy engagement had a panel. They were in Fort Mac on January 27th, and Alberta's looking at nuclear energy as well. That won't be looked at
Scott
here.
Morswell said he is.
Yeah, that won't be looked at here in BC. It's banned here in BC. So, almost everything is banned here in BC. Pretty soon we'll be banned here in BC.
Well, unless we go into the wind farm business, the wind farm podcast.
Doug Ford, you're talking about separatist movements. Doug Ford makes a plea to Quebecers. Listen to this.
It'd be a disaster for our country if the Separatists got elected. It's as simple as that. We have to be a united Canada right now. There's never been a more important time in our history to make sure that we stand shoulder to shoulder, united. And not only it'll be good for Canada, it will be good for Quebecers. So folks, remember that. You want to thrive, you want to prosper, you'll prosper a lot more as a united Canada.
I don't know if the reverse is true, by the way. And that's going to be, if they do succeed in getting a referendum, I think that's going to be a question. Is Quebec in Canada better for the rest of Canada? Rather than the opposite, which is the question he asked. I feel like that's a 20th century question. I think the question in this century is going to be, is it worth it for the rest of Canada to have Quebec in this confederation? Bear in mind, if they left, the extent to which they could be bullied by Canada, the Canada that remains. It might actually be to the advantage of the rest of Canada. When I say bullied, I mean like that's the kind of thing that happened. Like the European Union bullies Switzerland, for example, and it bullies Norway, and it to a lesser extent bullies Britain as well, the countries that aren't in the European Union. The bigger country or the bigger bloc always bullies the littler one. Like we're being bullied by the Americans, obviously. So this idea of an independent Quebec being like really harming the rest of Canada, I don't know. It would change things so much politically as well. And he said united Canada. For the first time in history, you might actually have a united Canada if it didn't have Quebec in it. The reason that Canada isn't united, one of the main reasons, is because Quebec is a nation within a nation. That you can't have a unity in that context, can you? It's always a compromise.
It would be the end of the Liberal Party as well. They would never, not for a long time, have power because they basically give everything to Quebec to retain that power. And we're seeing all these policies. This is why we're in this anti-energy policy right now. This is why Canada is where it's at. This is why we're here right now.
Yeah. And, the surveys show it. I make a habit of always reading all the new polls and all the new surveys. Angus Reid, they get a lot of abuse, but they do some really interesting stuff, Angus Reid, in this regard, where they ask all kinds of interesting questions and they ask each province every single time, almost every single time. You can tell which one is Quebec without even looking at the names because it's the weird one. It's the one that doesn't align with the rest of the provinces. Like Quebec really is, consistently is different from the rest of Canada. And it's, I think that's verifiably true.
They say that themselves. They're a distinct society.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's true.
That's part of their thing. They have their own CPP. They're the only province that's allowed to have their own CPP, the QPP. They have a lot of things that are on their own. They're a very distinct society. They have culture, languages. They have all kinds of things, right? So,
well, they just knocked the crown off their off this symbol, I think, in the courts and things, because their coat of arms just had the crown, because obviously Quebec at least nominally, is the head of state is the King Charles, but they don't like that because they're different. So they got rid of the crown. That was like last week, I think.
And then there's Jesse Ventura says Minnesota should join Canada. So I just thought I'd play this because, just because there's nuts everywhere. So let's listen to this one here.
I am one that thinks, let me throw this out on your show and we'll get some headlines. How about since Trump dislikes Minnesota so bad and we're so out of control, let's join Canada.
That's good enough.
Instead of Canada.
That's good enough because he just goes into a longer. Hey, we don't need another. We don't need
to what he was in movies. Like he was such a different character in the movies, wasn't he? Like in Predator. Can you imagine his character in Predator being anything like the real Jesse Ventura?
We don't need another cold province. You can keep Minnesota.
I mean, it would immediately have the highest GDP per capita.
Yeah, there you go.
We could claim Bob Dylan as one of our famous sons.
And Jesse Ventura. It looks like he's seen better days.
Yeah, he's looking a bit rough, isn't he? He's looking, God knows what's going on with him.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't think Canadians would want Minnesota, would they? I think they would take California, but I don't think they would take Minnesota.
And CBC working on it. They're working it hard right now. They're working it hard. They went and found all the experts they could find here to, they want to control the internet. Listen to this here. Listen.
The U.S. is now considered one of the main sources of disinformation online, with popular social media platforms filled with fake accounts that are pushing false narratives. That has researchers here in Canada saying that Ottawa has to do more to increase online protection. Eli Glassner has all the details.
With talk of separation in both Quebec and Alberta, social media researchers are worried about a new front in the battle between Canada and the States.
We really need to get our act together on this because generative AI in the next 6, 12, 18 months is going to transform how we understand information.
So yes, we are incredibly vulnerable.
We really have to get serious about this. How are we going to get reliable news about what's happening on platforms that are owned by American billionaires?
Justin Ling is a columnist with the Toronto...
That's good enough. I can't even take it anymore. How about letting the news back on the platforms? How about that, Justin? How about that? From the Toronto Star. How about that? How about getting rid of the Online News Act and allowing news media, independent outlets, putting their news back on that platform instead of the Liberals pushing out their propaganda? And the CBC, you want to talk about disinformation. The CBC is the home of disinformation and misinformation. We can play clips all day long on that.
Well, just look at our back catalogue where we've pointed out the many, many, many times that they've spread disinformation. But it's not just them, is it? It's also the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
He often puts out misinformation.
But they're going hard at work here to block, this is what they want to control all information. That's what Mark Carney said when we asked the question ourselves. What about getting rid of the Online News Act? You're not going to like the answer. We're going to give more money to the CBC. Look what they've done with that money. Look what they've done with that money. Look at where Canada is. And look at their platform. Look at what they are. They are not a news outlet anymore. They are a propaganda outlet. Even government studies have said that they are nothing more than an arm of the Liberal government.
Yeah. I also can't help but observe the irony of this guy going on railing against the Americans as he sits in front of what appears to be a map of New York City. It's just another thing. This is, again, I like these cheeky little apparently trivial points. I like to make them. But I just think so many Canadians, and I mean specifically on the sort of liberal left, the elbows up people, they don't seem to realize that they are basically, to all intents and purposes, Americans. They just live in an American universe. They're right now, I can almost guarantee you, right at this moment, they're looking at videos and reading articles about events in Minneapolis that have absolutely nothing to do with Canada whatsoever.
Their whole website.
Don't even seem to realize that they live in an American world, and they've chosen that. Whereas the people that they detest, who are often in places like Saskatchewan and Alberta, aren't like that at all. they really do live in a Canadian world. They live in Canada. You know, it's like the irony of that.
You can go to the CBC website. We do it all the time. You can go there almost any time, and it's basically a TDS website. They basically Donald Trump lives in their head, and that's what they do. They feed their base like the raw meat every day, and they live in fear. Because you know the headlines right now, they've got on there: U.S. is treason, Trump covert covets. I don't know.
Look
like,
at that one. Is MAGA weaponizing Alberta separatism? That is a glorious CBC headline.
It's just absolute trash. It's absolute. Where's this? We're going to cover off some stories, waste, fraud, and abuse here in Canada. CBC doesn't want to cover those because you know they don't want to highlight anything that's wrong here in Canada. But here's our old friend Sebastian Szymanski there talking about the meeting with the premiers here. He used to be the PR guy for Pierre Poilievre.
I suppose like the ultimate proof, Sebastian, will be in when all of this materializes, what happens then? Because we still are kind of talking about it in the ether, but like there's no actual proposal that Alberta submitted yet. They say that's going to happen in June.
Exactly, Vashi. I mean, the proof will be in the pipeline, so to speak. I think, look, it's encouraging to see Prime Minister Carney is moonlighting as a therapist between the premiers providing such apt counseling. But I think it's important to remind Canadians and your viewers that there's one person in that room that holds all the cards, and that person is Prime Minister Carney. He's the one who has the sole jurisdiction to push through projects like this. British North America Act, I believe it's Section 92 that permits him to do this. So while I appreciate that we're reconciling the feelings of Premier Eby and Premier Smith, and obviously they represent two different constituencies that should be heard, the ball is really firmly in Prime Minister Carney's court, and it's time for him to actually go through with this, get out of the way in many instances, and in many of the regulations that remain in place that prevent these projects from being built, ironically, and proceed. So let's see when that actually happens. I hope for the sake of Canadians that it's sooner.
That's good. Again, is it 11 months now? It's got to be 11 months in this new government. And we're still talking about whether we're going to build a pipeline or not. There's no you hear Eby's stuff, like there is no project put forward. Like I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. You sit down. I'm an accountant. You sit down and you look, what's our number one asset that we can sell to the rest of the world? How do we generate money for Canada? What is it? Does anybody in the room figured that out yet? What is it? Let's see. Is it wind farms? No, it's not wind farms. Is it solar panels? Marketing consulting? No, that's what we buy. We buy a ton of that from New York. We get that from New York. It's oil. So now we have oil. How do we get it to other markets? And then somebody's got there. Well, they got the old reports there from Trudeau and Carney that says there's no business case for LNG even. So maybe they got to throw that report away.